Starting off this afternoon, going out to feed the goats and trying out some new equipment. Not sure what kind of video I'll get. Can't really see what I'm aiming at. See if we can adjust it a little bit there. Alright, gonna go feed the goats, get them some good grub. There's supposed to be some rain coming, so I want to get them ready before the rain gets here. About the time I got out of the truck and got started getting ready to cut some limbs for the goats, I got a phone call and decided to take it and talk for a while. And so the rest of this video is going to be muted with just a voiceover. So if it doesn't seem to match, or it seems like I'm out of breath at the wrong times, or not out of breath when I should be, it's due to the voiceover. What I'm doing here is cutting some privet limbs for my goats. They like privet pretty well. They'll eat the leaves, and then they'll also strip the bark and eat the bark off the stalks. I have been sort of cultivating this hedgerow of privet for several years now to use as feed. I'll cut some on one end of the hedgerow this summer and winter, and then I let the rest grow. Next year I'll cut from the other side, and then vice versa the following year, so that it's sort of like hay or some other renewable feed that it'll continue to regrow. And I don't ever cut it all out. I always leave some behind in the areas where it's growing, so that more will grow for the next year. And by doing that, I'll always have some privet to feed during the winter, and I won't have to worry about having as much hay on hand. In the winter, the privet thins out some. Some of the leaves will die and fall off, but throughout the year you have privet limbs and leaves that are growing and producing some greenery. And by harvesting from one place or another throughout the year, and not over trimming or over cutting one area, I'm able to keep privet growing for my goats, and it really takes a load off of me as far as having to produce hay every year. I'm able to use this privet, and because it's green and it stays sort of lush, they're getting some better quality feed compared to the dry hay. I decided to shoot this sort of in real time and not try to speed up the video, just so you get an idea of sort of the daily time requirement it takes to provide this kind of feed to goats. Today I'm only feeding the 2 bucks that I have, so I don't have to get quite as much in the way of limbs and leaves. But if I were to try to feed the whole big herd, I would probably end up taking about twice as much time to cut limbs as I do in this video. These little trimming shears are about the best thing that I found to use for the privet. I used to use an electric chainsaw, but trying to use it on wet days or days where there was a lot of dew just really caused a lot of problems for the electric battery that it required. So, kind of going old school and using these pruning shears just a lot easier. I don't feed a tremendous amount of limbs at a time. I've heard that goats should get about 3 pounds of feed a day, hay or roughage, and this is probably less than that 3 pounds. But I also keep hay in for them, and they have some grass growing inside their paddock there that they're able to eat. So they probably would appreciate more limbs, but since I feed them on a day-to-day or every other day basis, they don't have a high limb requirement. Also today, in addition to the limbs that I gave them, I also gave them some grain. I don't feed a lot of grain on a regular basis. I don't intend for them to have a high grain intake. I want most of what they eat to be uh, foliage, leaves or limbs, or hay. You can see hay there on the barn floor for them to eat. But I do like to put some grain in if it's going to be raining or cool, especially when the temperatures start to drop, so that they'll be able to maintain a little bit higher uh, calorie count. And also, it's good to keep them enjoying the grain, knowing that it's there, knowing what the bucket looks like. So if they ever get out and I have to get them back in the pasture in a hurry, they'll want to come to the bucket, to the grain, and come back in and follow me where I want them to go. I would prefer not to do all my feeding on the ground, but these guys are just very um, aggressive toward anything that I've tried to put in there to feed them in. They usually jump on it, hit it with their heads, tear it up in some way, shape, or form. So they usually just get fed on the ground. I didn't feed the big herd any limbs today. They've got still got some privet that's growing in the pen with them. They also have some grass and other vegetation that I've turned them in on in the last day or two that they had not had before. So even though they were wanting a pile of limbs, I ended up just petting on them and talking to them for a while and checking on them to see how they were doing. I had one or two that had some lamenesses, and so I wanted to see how they were doing walking around. Just wanted to put my eyes on everybody and make sure everybody was feeling good and looking healthy. Still not used to using that new equipment and didn't realize that the camera wasn't pointing where I was looking. So I'm going to have to work on that. When I got back to the house, I started looking up at the sky, and I saw this group of buzzards flying around. I don't know what they were looking for, but here toward the end of the video, you can appreciate there's a big flock of them flying around up in the sky.